Welcome back, everyone, viewers and friends. Welcome to another episode of Trivial Objections. My name is Jared, your host. Today we've got the regulars. Nate returning from past episode. Adam, John, and Jacob. How are you guys tonight?
Good.
It's a lovely night.
Good. Today we've got an interesting topic, I would say. It's going to be deep in thought. Mostly centered around the topic of individualism versus collectivism. Now, this is a very broad, maybe intimidating topic, but I think we're going to have some good fun here. So I'm going to start with a simple question that's going to lead into others. But I asked this of someone yesterday, and I think it fits the topic. In your life, do you guys contribute your success or where you are in life more to your individual talents and skills as opposed to your family's help, or like you got your start because of the family that you were in or the group that you belong to? So I'll start. I'll start with Nate. Do you feel like you are where you are in life because of you or because of your family?
I think it's a huge part due to my family.
Okay.
Mind you, I was in a severe car accident that left me, I guess, just unable to make my own decisions. That is the easiest way to put it, for several weeks. And so I think the support from my family was a huge part of who I am now.
Okay. So you think they also played a role in like you getting into school and you making the grades that you do, or just like where you're at in your life, you contribute most of that to your family unit and your cohesive unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, so granted, you can go all the way back to like the, if you were to say the marshmallow test. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of that. Why don't you refresh us?
So the marshmallow test was a test that they gave to grade school students, and it was literally, the test was, I'm going to put you in this room, I'm going to leave, there's a marshmallow in front of you, you can eat the marshmallow whenever you want, but if you wait until I come back, I will give you another marshmallow and you can eat two.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's a super simple like test, but over longitudinal, we're talking like 30 years of the study, the people that had delayed gratification had much more quote unquote successful lives in achieving things that they wanted to achieve, finishing college and all the other stuff.
Okay.
And my personal experience is that I'm going to place that all on coping skills and things that are taught to the 10-year-old person that chose not to eat that marshmallow. And so ultimately I say yes, my family were the people that made me who I am today.
Okay. John, what about you?
Definitely, I think that's put in terms. So I think family, without a doubt, there for a real long time, 18 years of my life, I'd say. I wouldn't be where I'm at without the help that my family and my mom and dad did for me.
Sure.
The support alone. I mean, they raised you. They made you who you are today. But I think once you become that individual, you start making your own decisions. Your life's decisions are your life is impacted by all those decisions. And when you start thinking of a career, it's just, I think it's beyond the family aspect. I think that's more individual.
I'm not a huge proponent of Freud, but Freud predicted that by the time you're like 4 or 6, you were who you're going to be for the rest of your life. And so even saying that you made those decisions as an adult, Freud would say that as a 4 or 6-year-old, based on who you were made to be by that age, by that very young age, dictated a lot of what your future was. And I'm not a proponent of that, but just throwing that out there, that Freud would say it was very much so your parents who dictated your parents and your circumstances who dictated who you are today.
Okay. So John thinks it's a combination. So when you're young, it's more on your family, and then when you're an adult, it's more on you. And Nate thinks that it's still the family aspect affects you into your adult life. Is that a fair summary?
Very much so.
Okay. Let's ask. Let's ask.
Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead.
Let's ask Adam. Adam, what's your opinion? Do you think it was more you and your determination, or was it your family, or a combination of the two?
Well, it was definitely my family, but I don't want to just limit it to my family either, because
that's good.
Good
point.
I don't know, like how I grew up, I always had a really tough time being myself. And there were some people in high school they played a very pivotal role in helping me become who I was. And it was nothing I did, you know what I mean? Like I definitely didn't show any potential in certain areas that made them want to do that. They were just incredibly kind. And to me, they showed Christ, and that gave me the confidence to be myself and to, how do I say it? I don't know. I changed dramatically. It was a total 180 or a 360 rather. So it's always been the people in my life. You know what I mean? I owe everything I am to them. So, and anything that I do, I do it for them, any good things anyway. So I would say for the most part, it's my family, it's my friends, it's been all the people in my life.
Okay, so it's your support group, the group of people that you surrounded yourself with, basically.
Right.
Right. Okay, great. And Jacob, what about you? Are you kind of individualistic? Are you more the groupthink, collectivist, or is it a combination of the two?
I think we mostly all agree here. I think my family definitely made me who I was for a very long period of time, and but in our culture particularly, there's such a focus on go your own way and do whatever you want that leaves some more possibility for branching off and becoming your own person.
When you say our culture, can you specify, please?
Compared to let's say Japan, when you grow up in their situation, you would have a pretty rigid idea of what you were going to do for the rest of your life, I would say. Here, it's a lot more open as to your decisions affect your life more, I would think.
Okay, so you would say it depends on your society in terms of how much individualism affects you.
So, largely, yeah, because I think there's individualistic focuses in certain cultures and the opposite in other cultures. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that is because it kind of gets down to the core of what the argument is. So, and I think we all hit on it a little bit. At the core, it's basically down to the way you think. So, from what I was reading when I was gathering for this podcast and this topic is Western countries tend to think more individualistic. Not all the time, but it's the rights of the individual, and you can be who you want to be, and all this and that, and a lot of it had to do with family. It's like the way we think, and our parents taught us to like be our own person, and like what you like, and do things that like make you happy, as opposed to maybe collectivism, or in a more liberal society like China or Asia, or even in the Soviet Union when it was still in existence. You did what your parents did. So if your dad was a farmer or you were this, then that it just kind of flowed that. So there's definitely arguments on both sides.
Yeah, I want to pause you there, saying that like China is a more liberal society or something like that. I think you're cross-referencing your semantics and not necessarily. I don't know. I just don't think liberal is the right word there.
Okay, so what's the right word? Do you think?
I would say collectivism is a better word than liberal.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they're communist, so I mean.
So that's much more collectivist in theory.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. So like, it's more like those Eastern type of cultures kind of tend to be more collectivist and
right. In like America, your parents ask you, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" In Japan, I imagine they just kind of expect you to
carry on the family name,
get a
or the
paying job and be respectable and support the family type thing. But
right, but it's not even like you don't always get the family job, or like there's not always an inheritance. You know what I mean? You definitely have to have a job. There's a huge focus in Japan on having a good, well-paying job, and it's for the family to support them, but it's not necessarily you fall into it. And I definitely, Japan is highly collectivist, but it's not a socialist country. It's mostly market dominated. So I don't think that socialism and collectivism always go hand in hand.
Mind you, I am very socialistic in views most of the time. So keep that in mind as we continue this debate.
I know.
Yeah, I was looking at someone that was visiting Japan, and he said, for example, showing their kind of mindset, they all got off the bus that was like a snowboarding trip, and everyone unloaded everyone's stuff, like just without even thinking about it. It's just, they just do that. So
because it's helpful to your fellow friend and human, which is a good thing, which we should all help each other unload things off the bus.
Agreed.
Right. Like that's the big thing about Japan, that what they've gotten from having collectivism is the idea that forms their society is about oh gosh, I just blanked on the word. It's about harmony. And so you do whatever you can to preserve that harmony, but it's the harmony of the group. And so with that harmony comes things like trust. And so something really crazy is there's a bunch of TV shows in Japan, because they have a lot of wacky TV shows, but there was one in Japan that's about how these parents will like have total faith in sending their 6-year-old kids to run errands for them in the middle of Tokyo.
I saw this.
Totally, yeah. And they are not worried about them getting abducted. But imagine, a city like Tokyo would be like New York here. No way would you let your kid out of your sight. You know what I mean? But it comes from having that collectivist culture and the idea that everyone is working together for the betterment of society and to preserve that harmony, that they think that they can trust people enough to let their kids out of their sight. And
yeah, I think it's called
that says a lot.
First Errands or something like that. Like if you Google that, it'll pop up. They send like 4 and 5-year-olds out to do errands like across the city, and they like video them incognito on their way. Just like that's what they do over there. It's like there's just
It's crazy that we would never. Well, granted, this is a TV show, thankfully, but
right.
But I mean, that's part of their culture. The fact that they're even like making that shows like that's a rather common thought process. It may not be things that, but like it just goes like against their culture. They have trust in their fellow man, and like Adam said, they're all about this harmony and stuff, which is great. But what happens when you send your kid out and there's always something happens, and does that structure tend to fall apart after that, after trust is like broken?
I don't even know.
I just in theory, I would say even no, because if you think about it, in a suburb in rural America, if a child goes missing and then tweet goes out, it goes out on Facebook, everybody gets involved. Not necessarily in the most healthy of ways, but more people care than don't care, I feel.
And as well with that is that in Japan, everybody's role is really important, because the role that you have is the one that is going to better society. And so you need to do it to the fullest. And so the people who take care of the people who get abducted and stuff like that take their role super seriously. So you have faith in the people, in the police and the investigators who are going to investigate that situation. And so I could see how, someone who lost a kid or something like that would lose a little bit of faith, but it's more just shame on that outlier as opposed to this system failed us.
Okay, so do you contribute the high, I guess, I'm going to use a very extreme example, but the high murder rate or crime rate or violence in this country, is that because we're not, with this collectivist, everyone help each other society, or is it because we're more individualistic?
I think we are more prone to having big egos and like the world centered around you, because kind of raised like that. So there might be a lot less empathy involved in the way we're raised. So that like a school bus in America is a lot different than a school bus in Japan. Like I think I this same guy I watched, he said the kids all get off the school bus, stand in the line, turn and wave and thank the bus driver before it goes on. Like what?
Yeah, that would never happen here. The kids will.
And there's
like,
all kinds of bullying on our
like,
school buses,
yeah.
and I don't know how that situation is over there, but
That's crazy. I don't know. That's insane to me. Like in our country, like you said, that would never happen. That we would, the kids would like talk shit about the bus driver, and probably he's probably this old, fat, sweaty man that no one likes, and
sounds like you're talking shit about him.
Right. No, but that's the perception, right?
Right.
So like, how can we break that mold? Is it just a mindset? Is it the way
A parenting tactic? You're not
parenting,
tactic. It's
or
parenting.
A lot of it's
Or is
probably
it deeper?
attachment style.
Yeah.
I've been looking into a lot of things like self-efficacy, and I think a lot of issues that stem in the U.S. that we don't see in other countries is due to attachment styles. And that's not necessarily saying that other countries have just all-around better attachment styles than the U.S. They might. I've not looked at the research, but I think that the majority of issues with children today come from or stem from poor attachment styles to their parents.
To piggyback off that, I agree 100%. And I mean, there are studies that show that that's a thing, and that since 1980, empathy has gone down 40%. 40% empathy has gone down, starting with the college age people, since 1980. 40% in America, and most of it seems to do largely with attachment style. Whether that comes from being individualist or collectivist culture, you can't really say, but I mean, causation doesn't always equal correlation. But in this case, if you're not caring so much about the group, and I would argue that more and more we're focusing more on ourselves, whether we even mean to or not, with just what our society has become all about and what we tend to glorify in the media and entertainment and stuff like that. I would say it definitely plays a role. But I mean, 40% empathy has gone down. That's crazy.
Can you guys explain a little bit? You guys mentioned the word attachment style. Can you just kind of go into that a little bit, just so in layman's terms, like what exactly that is? Is that like a parenting style, or like what exactly is that in like the layman's terms?
Yeah, so there's basically 4 base attachment styles. There's secure, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive, and fearful, or most commonly referred to as avoidance.
Okay.
And through these 4 attachment styles, there's tons of different tests and studies done that look at the different relationships between these children that have these attachment styles and how they go about forming relationships with other people in society.
Okay, so there's a correlation between how how these attachment styles correlate to future behavior, basically.
Yes.
Okay. So coming back full circle, we all grew up, I would say, in a more individualistic society, but does that necessarily make us, not feel empathy for our common man? Is there a middle ground that we're trying to skate here? Because I feel like the first half of this is just kind of just bashing individualism, and that it's wrong, which I feel like it has its positives. And what do you think that is it all based on that, or is it just the way we were raised, or like why are we so much more individualistic than some other parts of the world?
I think a lot of it is it's a very fluid concept, and so you can't have too much of one or the other. If you've got too much collectivism and you go into communism and socialism, and even though I'm a big fan of socialism, if that were the case, then you don't have some of the individualistic ideas of invention and just new ideas and stuff like that. That being said, America tends to be more, in my opinion, individualistic, which is centered on individual wealth, leaving a name, basically just making as much as you can for your specific name. So like my name is Nate, so I'm going to make as the biggest impact I can on the earth so as many people remember my name. Versus collectivism is like, from what I've read, my experiences is more so I want to do the most that I can so that my future generations have the best opportunities that they have coming up.
Or just the other people in your life right then, kind of thing.
Yes,
Maybe not exactly.
Not even having like my offspring or whatever. Say like my humanistic beliefs of whatever I do as a person, I should be doing to better humanity as a race. Versus America's typical view, I feel, is whatever I do as a person, I want to increase my personal wealth.
Right, and it might be it probably doesn't go out to like they're thinking about the human race. They're probably just thinking about their family or like maybe even their community.
Yeah, their family, their community. I wouldn't say it doesn't even need to expand beyond that, but doing one good thing can have such a positive influence.
Why is there such a distinction, though, between
Well,
West
I mean,
and
I think
America and, the rest? Like, why is it just politics? Is it religion? Like, what do you think it contributes to this way of thinking?
Well, I mean, our country was founded on individual rights and the rights of the individual, and that's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? That's something that makes America really unique and really special. And I mean, like Nate was saying, it's brought about industry and technology and invention, and I mean, things that it makes people want to strive, because that's the American dream, right? The rags to riches thing. And the idea of the individual, and the individual has power, that's a completely American idea. I mean, that's all in the Declaration of Independence. You know what I mean? And so with this, you have a lot of power as an individual. You know what I mean? That's when it comes to the idea of your property rights and your personal rights, your right to bear arms, all that kind of stuff comes from individualism. And that's a huge plus. And that's written into our Declaration of Independence. That's where our Constitution comes from. Yeah. And we're not based on tradition like a lot of other countries. We're also a really young country compared to the rest of the world. So other countries had times where back in ancient days when they worshipped gods based on the sun and based on things like that, and rituals were made. And even though they've maybe outgrown those gods, some of these rituals are still around, and all that they had was each other. You know what I mean? In America, we were, it wasn't easy, but we could send messages across the world. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick, but back in ancient China, they couldn't do that, So I think a lot of it comes from history, where America doesn't have a lot of history, and individualism was the beginning of our history. But somewhere like China or Japan, they've had a lot of history, and a lot has gone on in that time.
Yeah, I would say look at the big powers of the world right now. Russia, China, whatever, the US, whatever. China has been very collectivist its entire reign of being a country, and it's been very successful. It's always been one of the big 10 countries. And then you look at America and name another individualistic country. Can you do it even?
Another than what?
Another individualistic country that focuses so much on the individual.
Like England?
I would say our Western.
I'd say most of Europe.
Our Western and European way of thinking. I mean, they're not as individualistic, but I would say like they're still,
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's.
Yeah, you can do what you want to do. Like there's freedom and all that. So I mean,
it's like.
Yeah, not to say Japan and China don't have freedom, but you know what I'm trying to say.
It's like a predominantly Western idea, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very Western idea.
And I think that there are some quite socialist type Western countries, but I think that a certain amount of socialism is required to allow individualism, probably.
Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, explain that.
When someone retires, they've been paying into their Social Security all their life, and now they don't have to like live off of their kids and in their kids' homes for the rest of their life. They have like retirement money. I don't know. There's might be other ways, but I didn't think.
You didn't think we'd ask that?
Let's see.
I mean, well, so to that effect, it's kind of a negative, honestly, that Americans have an individualistic view when it comes to saving money. So Japan, being more collectivist, wants to provide more for the future generations, like we've been saying, and so they're the best, almost the best in the world at saving money. America is one of the worst when it comes to saving money on an individual basis. Nobody saves money in America. On average, when you compare it to other countries. I don't know the exact numbers, but I was looking this up a couple of weeks ago. And so and a lot of that comes from us being individualistic and more in the present, because we're not thinking about the future as much. We're doing more in the here and now, which can be super helpful, but also detrimental.
Right, but I mean, you're getting into economics as well there, and finance, because you're talking about comparing a country's income level, income brackets based on the purchasing power of the dollar.
That's very true.
Our purchasing power of our dollar today is significantly less than what it was for our parents. So that our inability to save money isn't fully the individual's fault.
No, it's definitely not. And I should have been a little bit more detailed, and that it's not just because we're individualistic, but right. I do think that does play a role, because on average, more collectivist cultures, the individuals are better at saving money compared to a more individualistic culture.
I think it's kind of the thought processes behind the American individual too, is we're instant gratification is so easy that if you want something, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
The internet has instant access. It can be shipped to your door in 2 days. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think a part of it too, success plays a big role in emboldening individualistic thoughts. So like when you see success and you see like, oh, I work hard for this, and it's because, you know, I have a successful job, or I created this product and I have this business, so you want to spend it. So that makes you think highly of yourself, and you're more prone to share your individual ideas, and you know that's part of our culture and our economy. So
the marshmallow test that Nate said earlier too is a good example.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like a status now with the money I have, instead of saving for the sake of like the family type thing, maybe.
So, very different topic for another time, but I would say we should take that same mantra. There's a big debate against participation trophies right now, and that argues that the people that get the MVP awards or the most improved awards, whatever, the argument is that it lowers the value of those awards because it gives everyone a participation trophy. I disagree with that argument for the same reasons that you guys just said. That the people that do get the MVP award stand out as a leader among their peers. The people that do get the most improved award are able to teach their peers and all this other stuff. And so I just want to throw that out there as a fun caveat that I noticed between you guys. I know some of you aren't all big proponents of the everyone gets a trophy mantra.
I would agree. I'm not. But I see where you're coming from as well. And you know, maybe if we weren't in America, that would be okay. You know, in Japan, no one would, you know, think twice about like giving everyone a trophy, or in collectivist society, because it's all for the betterment of the group. But I feel like in this country, it's just not going to work. The mindset is just, you know, me. What about me? And
you see, you say not going to work, yet we produce the leaders of tomorrow. So the mindsets and the values that we instill in today's youth are the values that the next generation carries on with them. And so my mindset is, why not carry on the fact that Johnny got MVP? Johnny's a great ball player. You guys can all learn from him. But you guys also participated in the team and helped the team win our conference. So you guys all get participation trophies also.
Okay, true, yes. So the winners got trophies in a team sport. But what you were saying was giving participation trophies to everyone who competed.
Okay, I will revise what I said. Okay. You played on our team. You helped our team become a better team. You get recognition for that in the form of something physical that you can take and put in your room. And every time you look at that, you can say, hey, I did that. I was a part of a team. I helped something.
Even if you have
this is just my 2 cents, but I think in our culture, we are so busy comparing ourselves to each other that I think that we would see the big trophy that they got and the small participation trophy that I got and feel like I wasn't good enough.
What's the difference? What's the difference now versus me getting no trophy and seeing my peer get still the same big trophy, yet I've got nothing?
It makes you
because
drive
I feel like people
give you drive, yeah, or so they say. I'm not sure what the studies say, but to me, that would fire me up and want me to like be in that situation.
I would argue that me having that small trophy and seeing my friend get the bigger trophy, say, I want that trophy next year, I'm going to strive for that. It's the exact same argument is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Nate, on the participation. Look at swimming, for example. We all received a trophy at the end of the year for participating and being a part of the team that summer. Now, there was a most valuable swimmer, most improved swimmer. So there's a lot of, I mean, you're talking about a 60-person team. But without a doubt, I like that they gave everyone trophies, even if it was a small one. Seeing another person get that big one is what gave me that drive to improve myself the next year because, well, individual drive of wanting to beat that person and maybe brag about it or just...
Would you have been upset if you didn't get a participation trophy and they just gave those awards, so the MVP and the most improved, and everyone else got nothing? Would it have changed what you thought?
I would not necessarily have been more upset. However, I come from a secure attachment family where I was comfortable with who I was as a person.
Sure.
Coming from a different attachment style, maybe not. I don't know how it would have felt otherwise.
Okay. So it's very individualistic in how you think about things. So
yes.
Okay. So that once again we're hitting that individual argument. So that's how it is. Does anyone have any insight on how participation or let's just use the participation trophy example. Is that how it is in collectivist societies like Japan, China, all of those where they're a little more, for the betterment of the group, or is there even competition in those?
Yeah, I was wondering if they might give out a trophy to the team, but like no individual like MVP or anything awards.
Well, I don't know necessarily about team stuff, but I mean, schooling and testing is really big in Japan, and so. It's huge. I mean, if we won like a state championship or something like that for a team here, it would be the same as getting the high score of the class in Japan and on an individual level. And so I don't think that they really think the same way because, like I said, everyone in Japan has a certain role to play, and you will do your absolute utmost best to make sure that you are the most proficient at that role. And so anything that would say that you're not would drive you to work that much harder or lead you to a super depressed, crushed state because you are not helping the society enough. And so to my knowledge, I don't think they do like participant awards because you have a certain role to play. But then again, I don't really know a lot about the youth of Japan. But I do know when it comes to schooling, they don't say, oh, you did a good job. It's first and second of the highest scores. And everyone after that, they post the scores. But it's not like, oh, you did such a good job. It's the rules and everything are very defined in Japan. So the test scores you need to get into this school are very defined. And there's no lax about that. And so you know what you need to do. And so if you don't if you don't hit the bar, then you missed, and you got to figure it out for yourself.
So it sounds like that argument is in favor of individualism. I'm just throwing that out there that we've been using this country for our theoretical collectivist idea the entire time, yet that ideology is very individualistic.
Well, that's super true, but that comes. Oh, sorry. Go off, Jacob.
No, you can finish you can go on.
Well, so that's true in that situation, but it is all for the betterment of society, because it is how you get into the best role that you can be in to benefit the larger society as a whole. And so, yeah, you have to focus on the individual and the individual talents and stuff like that for now, so you can benefit the group later on. And typically when you get a job in Japan, you stay in that job for a really long time, like probably the rest of your life. There's not a lot of job hopping in Japan, unless you're one of those people who didn't get a good test score and you're aimless around, in which case you probably aren't going to be able to support your family as well. Status is a huge thing in Japan. For men, you're probably going to think that you're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be attractive to a lot of women and things like that. And so there is a huge focus on the individual, but how that individual can help the group. So it's not, Japan's definitely not on the collective scale. It's definitely not the most. China is more collectivist. Japan is just nice because there is a good amount of individualism and collectivism that you can see whenever the individualism comes out of the collectivism.
So it sounds like in moderation, which is, for the most part, for everything that I've seen, in every aspect of life, moderation is the key.
Pretty much. But even then, though, I mean, like, Japan's philosophy is harmony amongst the group. And in America, we don't have that. And even in some socialist cultures, they don't have that. It's not about the harmony of the group per se. It's, yeah, everyone gets taken care of, but it's not necessarily about the harmony. And in a socialist culture, a lot of times people are going to be the same, but in a collectivist culture like Japan, there are definitely people who, you got those highest test scores, you are a step above the rest. And it's a market driven economy. And so you're not focused on just being like everyone. To why that's, I think that's the big distinction.
Jacob, what were you going to say?
I was going to say there's some definitions some people use to help with this. Vertical and horizontal individualism and collectivism. And Japan would be horizontal or vertical collectivism, because they do have the idea of individuals maybe not being equal, and some climb higher up the social ladder and then maybe get deferred to, but they still have the idea of the collective, even if they have people higher up in the hierarchy. So
it sounds like what you're saying is that you climb higher for the betterment of the people.
I think that is, yes.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. When we as human nature, we're selfish, and for the most part, and we always are trying to, like, survival of the fittest, blah, blah, blah.
You say that, yet human nature in half the countries that we've talked about tonight are more collectivist or more individualistic. So it sounds like a split 50 almost of human nature is collective or human nature is individual.
Right. It's not necessarily inherently one or the other.
I would say in the U.S. it is inherently more individual, but that is just what we are more exposed to and more prone to.
Right.
Okay. No, that's a good observation, but I just want to point out, like, what happens to people in a collectivist society who are at the top of this vertical ladder, you say, Twaff. Are they really in it for the betterment of the people or for the betterment of their power? So that's what happened for a lot of the socialist countries. There was they took care of their citizens, or did they? They were in power forever, and they, if they saw a threat to that power, they eliminated it because they had so much control over those people. So I would be all I'm saying is it's not a perfect world. So
No.
Right.
yeah,
I would
you have to
definitely.
find some of that balance, that harmony.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like Japan, I think, is extremely patriarchal, like way more than we are. Like
Yeah.
the father is the head of the household. Like it's a lot more than it is here. So that could be a possible downside to the collectivism added to that, maybe.
Yeah, because I mean, there's always going to be a leader, and what happens when we all, it's all for the betterment of the group, but who decides on what's better for the group? You know what I mean? So it's like, just be wary. I think that's why in America we're so skeptical, because we saw that, you know, this blind loyalty to the group when there, you still need a leader, and sometimes if everyone has that same group think and they're all following this guy, I mean, he may not be the great leader that you thought, you know.
Specifically, you're talking about
Hitler, Stalin.
Yeah, Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, the old emperors of Japan, Mao, like they, you know, collectivism, great, like all this is good for this society. We all get, you know, food and clothes, and we all have the same jobs, and everyone's living in harmony, but we're being controlled. So I feel like there's a balance here. That's why I feel like in America we were like the opposite. So like the individual's opinion matters, and they're more powerful for a reason. So we can prevent that type of, I guess, exploitation or risk of being controlled by someone who maybe not doesn't have the interest of the group. They just have the interest in their own power.
I see what you mean, and I agree. I actually agree a whole lot with what you're saying. I think that Americans are still very easily manipulated because we focus so much on the individual. But I mean, I will say, so like an interesting story is during World War II in Japan, it was so much about the culture and the country in Japan that it was a big deal for us not to go to certain parts of Japan and for us to not bomb certain parts of Japan, because all of Japan would have striked back. And they were training old women, like elderly women, to use spears and to kamikaze against American troops. They were training kids to do the exact same. And so you're totally right in that you can convince, in America, I don't think that we would ever do that necessarily. I don't think that we would ever the government wouldn't go to, my house and say, okay, 85-year-old woman, here's a spear, get ready to die for your country. I don't think that we would do that for the betterment of the country, right? We would do that to protect the people we care about, because those are the individuals that we care about. You know what I mean? But it's not going to be for the betterment of society necessarily. So I think you're totally right. I still think, of course, we can be manipulated. I think anyone can.
Oh
but
yeah, no, I'm not saying Americans can't be manipulated, but I'm saying that in this aspect, individualism is a plus here. That's all that I was arguing there, because you see so many examples of where, you know, the collectivist slash socialism kind of way kind of backfired a lot, actually.
I agree.
Oh man, so how far in? We've been in it about 45 minutes, I'd say. So we kind of took a broad scope of everything. So ask you guys one last question before we head out. Where do you think we're headed? Do you think that, you know, America will continue to be individualistic and will still be, you know, this and that, or will we tend to move towards the middle? Like where do you guys feel like we're headed in terms of in individualism versus collectivism?
I think it's a pretty fine line in between the two, but I think it's a teeter-totter. You might have periods of more individualistic views and actions, or you might have a period or generation otherwise. And I think we're always going to stay that way. I don't know. It's finding that balance.
I think it has a lot to do with the economic situations. So, if we're struggling financially, whether we have high unemployment or wages are down, we tend to, try and build ourselves up as a group, and then we'll, follow a more collectivist or a socialist leader who will, advocate for you. Oh, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this.
Hashtag Bernie Sanders.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. No, like the young in this country flock to him because, we have masses of student loan debt, and he preached, we'll make college free and we'll get rid of your debt, and that's helping bring about this collective mindset as a whole. So, but when the economy is good, we're making lots of money, we can pay off everything, and so we're not opposed to spending a little more for good stuff on like a house or a car, or even paying more for school, because we're not as strapped for like wages and stuff like that. So I think in America it has a lot to do with the economy and the ebbs and
You
flows.
say that, yet trickle-down economy does not work.
I didn't say anything about trickle-down.
It sounds like
economy.
what you're saying is
No.
that
I'm saying the way we think ebbs and flows with the economy. So, it's always nice to have, when wages are low, we always want government to fix it. So the American people and the voter will tend to, vote more left, because, they are the ones that'll grow government and use programs to fix it. But when the economy is good, we tend to go more right, because more of this money, so then, the government's not going to be intervening. They'll tax us less so we can keep more of our stuff. So I'm just saying it ebbs and flows with the economy. That's just what I've noticed.
I don't disagree. I am saying that with what looks like is happening today in the United States, I'd say probably within 100 or so years, the United States is either going to split and become two countries, or there's going to be a huge divide and maybe even a civil war, to the point where, if you look at things like, even when our economy is doing good, the price of the Big Mac doesn't go up, which means the price of the McDonald's employee doesn't go up, which means the McDonald's employee is still making the same amount of minimum wage, even though his boss is making significantly more. And I think that negatively impacts us as society, saying that there's an unfair balance and that people will eventually realize this and something's going to happen. This is all theoretical, mind you, but I foresee that happening within the next, say, 100 years.
All right, and I think,
Too many people.
yeah, with going into the future, technology and automation, I think, is going to be a thing, and you're almost going to need to have some more socialist type laws. Like every party basically has been getting more liberal over the past 100 years, just steadily. So I think that's just a trend that's gonna keep going until we're I would say we're gonna go more towards collectivism in the future. We'll probably still have the mentality of individualism pretty much, but I think at least politically it's gonna get a little bit more collective or socialistic.
It sounds like we're all in the mindset that individual collectivism is soon going to happen upon the country, is what it sounds like.
See, I think I agree for the most part. I think that we're still going to be more individualistic. I still think, because you can be socialist and still be more individualistic. It's weird, but it definitely can still happen. I think that we're still going to be more concerned with ourselves. I think we're still going to be more concerned with our own. I just think that I think people want the government to take care of them more, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be honest, say, like, if I could opt out of Social Security on my paychecks and just save my money the way I want to, I would. To my knowledge, I can't. Maybe I can, but I don't think that I can.
No, you can't. That's part of your federal taxes.
You cannot do that. Nope.
Right. So, I mean, but I would. You know what I mean? The government, to me, I know I don't want to go super far off, but I mean, to me, the government has misspent so much money, and the fact that people still have to pay so much money in taxes and yet sometimes still have to pay in, I understand the way it works. It just blows my mind. And then you see that we're like, our debt is incredible. I just don't want to give the government any more of my money. And so I think that we're still going to be individualistic, but I do think we're going to move towards a more socialist society. But like, what's the big debate right now? Gun rights. And it always comes down to, that's an individual right that you have. And even on topics like,
it's an individual right that affects society as a whole, though.
Right. I mean, you're paying into the current Social Security of people that are retired and older, or maybe needing that income monthly because they don't have the skills to go out and work anymore. So
I guess the way, but isn't the idea though? I think the idea is more like when you do it. I guess I never looked at it that way, but the way I was always taught and the way I've always heard people talk about it is, you're doing this for your own future. You're not doing this for the now. You're doing this for your own future. I'm paying this in for my future.
That's
the way you framed it is ideal. The way you framed it is honestly, that's really great. And that's a light I never looked at it in, but I never looked at it in that light because that's not the light that anyone talks about it in.
That's not how they sell it. They sold it
it's not gonna
back
work
in the day.
either.
That's how they sold it. It's like, you paid in and you were guaranteed money when you retired. That was how it was. And, it's still that way, but back then there were 4 people contributing to every 1 person getting benefits. Now it's 1 point, I think the latest study was 1.6 to every 1. So that's the problem with Social Security now.
There's too many people.
There's too many damn old people, and they just need to fucking die. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, no.
Oh my God.
Sorry. No, I'm kidding.
More people, more younger people in the workforce and not in the workforce. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and we might want to get into that for another day, but I completely understand that. So that kind of goes back to my economy debate here. You kind of like made it for me. Like, you were like, I'm making money. I don't want, as an individual, I earn that, and I don't want, the government taking that. But
I agree.
But it helps. But the program helps the group, though. It helps the old people, make ends meet when they're retired. So,
But that's not. I think that it honestly goes to the point of, it depends on what the real focus is, because that, like, seriously, John, I never thought of it like that. And that's awesome. Like, if they framed it that way, I would honestly be way more supportive of Social Security, but that's not the way we frame it, because that's not the mindset that we have in our culture. Yeah. We don't go into Social Security with a collectivist mindset. We go into it with an individualist mindset. And so if I would be way more down for socialism if we had a more collectivist culture, but we don't. We're based on the individual, if that makes any sense.
Here's the fundamental flaw of it, though, is because this person at 70 years old that's retired can't afford the medication to keep them alive from a disease or anything. I said earlier about the purchasing power of $1 is so much less now, and that's why Social Security is probably going to fail, on top of many other reasons. But
see, taking what both of you have said, coming from the more left socialistic collectivistic idea, I'm willing to pay however much into Social Security, as long as I have enough to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about giving my extra money, my quote unquote extra money, to those who need it. Right. And that is not the mindset that I feel a lot of people our age have.
Correct.
I would say more
not even our age.
I would say more people our age think that than our parents or our grandparents. Like, we're
once again though, man, like, if you look at the studies that show that empathy, mostly perspective taking and empathic concern for other people, has gone down 40%, the numbers don't really show that. And that's what leads me to think that we may move towards a more socialist culture or economy, but I think we're still more focused on ourselves. And that's my big problem. That's my concern. Like I said, I would be down for Social Security if we really cared about the group and honestly cared about each other. And it's not that we don't. I'm not trying to say that humans are, awful and completely selfish by nature, but I mean, I don't know. The data has shown that we don't care about each other as much as we used to care about each other. And so when we do certain actions and we do things to take care of each other, in reality, we're doing it to take care of ourselves. I just don't think that it turns out very well. But that's just, yeah.
Okay, I want to leave us with this one thought. A lot of what we've been talking about, so something I've been really big into currently is self-efficacy, which is effectively how I perceive myself and my abilities to do things, so my self-confidence, and how that affects me throughout the rest of my life. And my personal experience has shown that the attachment styles that we talked about way back when we started this episode, and how the insecure attachments lead to all these self-doubt and all the other things lead to being self-centered or not fucking... God, I can't even remember where my train of thought was going. Damn it. Brain injury. Shit. We're going to move on now.
I think I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say that all of this stems back to how we were... I think the word used was attachment style.
Yes.
Right? So it all has to stem from, like, when we were young, we were taught this, and we tend to, think that way as we get older. And so this kind of plays into that, right?
Yes, there's always been this big argument of nature over nurture, but recently we've very much discovered that, in my personal opinion and in a lot of research that I've seen, nurture wins out over nature. So you can be a healthy individual and be very smart, but if you're not given the proper opportunities, things aren't going to happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the opposite of that, if you are maybe a less intelligent, less inclined individual, yet you have the opportunities because of your situation, you're going to be, quote unquote, more successful than your more intelligent counterpart. And so a lot of it comes down to, in my mind, being your nurture versus your nature, and how you develop that original attachment style and how that dictates the rest of your future, which is very Freudian. And I'm not necessarily a huge Freud fan, but that's the way things tend to seem.
Okay. So the future is unknown. I think we'd all agree on that, but we tend to think maybe more collectivism as we go, but we're just still uncertain. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, collectivist individualism, I feel.
Collectivist individualism. Got it. Okay. All right, guys. Well, great discussion. I loved it. Any last thoughts before we sign out of here?
No last words from me.
No last words. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming on, and thank you so much for those watching and listening. Till next time. I think I'm not sure what we're gonna do next week. We'll have to talk about it, but stay tuned for the next episode. And this has been another episode of Trivial Objections. Have a good night, guys.